Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are walking into a house that, well, I think everyone in the world recognizes.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know the brick exterior, you know the date, you certainly know the name. But the more I looked into the stack of research for today, the more I realized that what we think we know about this case is basically a collection of magazine headlines and, rumors.
It is the ultimate example of a case where the mythology has completely overtaken the forensic reality.
Yes.
We treat it like a soap opera, the beauty queen mom, the rich dad, the pageant videos. But when you actually sit down with the case files, the autopsy protocols, and the police reports, you realize it's actually a tragedy of errors.
That is exactly what we are here to unpack. We are talking, of course, about the killing of JonBenét Ramsey. And I have to be honest with you, coming into this, I felt like the ultimate learner. I was overwhelmed.
It's easy to be.
I've seen the documentaries where ominous music plays and they point the finger at the parents. Then I watch another one that points the finger at an intruder. And I usually walk away feeling like I know less than when I started. So, what is our mission today?
Our mission is to strip away the sensationalism. We aren't here to judge the pageants or the lifestyle. We are here to look at the mechanics of the investigation.
Okay.
We want to understand why this case is unsolved. And to do that, we have to look at the massive systemic failures that happen in the first 24 hours.
The lost 24 hours.
Exactly. If you want to know why we don't have a conviction almost 30 years later, you don't look at the DNA labs of 2024. You have to look at the floorboards of that house on the morning of December 26th, 1996.
So it's not just a murder mystery.
No, not at all. It is a case study in crime scene contamination, a textbook example of what not to do.
So help us navigate this. What are the sources we are deep diving into today?
We have a pretty comprehensive stack. We are synthesizing the original Boulder Police Department reports, the autopsy protocols, which are difficult to read but necessary.
I imagine.
The grand jury documents that were released years later, and the conflicting analyses from the district attorney's office versus the police department. We're also looking at the defamation lawsuits, which, interestingly enough, established some legal facts that the public often ignores.
And I think that conflict, the police versus the DA, is going to be a huge theme today. It feels like there were two investigations happening simultaneously that hated each other.
Hate is probably not too strong a word.
Really?
It was a war. And the casualty of that war was justice for JonBenét.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's set the stage. December 1996.
It's Christmas in Boulder, Colorado, a wealthy, affluent university town. The Ramsey family lives at 755 15th Street. It's a large, sprawling Tudor-style home.
Right.
John Ramsey is the president of Access Graphics, a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. He's incredibly successful, very high status in the community.
A tech millionaire, essentially.
In the 90s, absolutely. And then you have Patsy Ramsey.
Oh, former Miss West Virginia.
Right. Very social, very involved in the community. And they have two children in the house, Burke, who is 9 years old, and JonBenét, who is 6.
And we have to mention the pageants, just for context, although I know we don't want to dwell on it.
It's relevant only in that it made JonBenét a public figure before she was a victim. She was Little Miss Colorado. She was a national tiny miss. But on the night of December 25th, Christmas night, the glitter is off.
They're just a family.
They are just a family. They go to a friend's house for dinner, the White's house. They come home. They put the kids to bed. The narrative, the official story, is that everyone is asleep.
Until the morning of December 26. This is where the timeline starts, and honestly, this is where the frustration begins for me. Walk us through the first hour.
It begins at 5:52 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Patsy Ramsey calls 911.
And it's a frantic call, right?
Oh, it's frantic. It's panicked.
Right.
She screams that her daughter is missing and that there is a ransom note.
So the initial report is a kidnapping, not a murder.
Correct. And that distinction is vital. The police are responding to a kidnapping in progress, not a homicide. 2 officers arrive within 3 minutes. It's still dark outside.
So really fast response time.
Very fast. And they enter the house. Now, in a modern investigation, or at least in the movies, you expect the police to come in, shout, "Nobody move," tape everything off, and put on the white Tyvek suits.
Right, the whole CSI treatment.
What actually happened was the complete opposite of that. They conduct what's called a cursory search. That is the phrase used in the reports.
Cursory search, so just a quick look around.
A quick look. They walk through the house looking for signs of forced entry. They don't see any shattered glass or kicked-in doors immediately. They're trying to establish the parameters of the crime.
And this leads us to what I think is the first sliding doors moment of the case, the basement door.
Yes. This is a critical moment. Officer Rick French is one of the first on scene. He goes down to the basement. Now, this is a labyrinthine basement, lots of rooms, storage areas, a wine cellar room. It's not just one big open space.
It's messy, cluttered.
Very. And he gets to a door that is secured by a wooden latch at the top of the frame.
A latch, so it's closed.
It's closed and latched from the outside. Officer French stands there. He looks at it, and he pauses. You have to try to get into his headspace at 6 a.m.
He's looking for a kidnapper.
He is looking for a kidnapper. He is looking for an escape route.
And logic dictates that a kidnapper doesn't run through a door and then latch it from the inside behind them. I mean, it's not even possible.
It's a physical impossibility for that to be the exit. So he reasons the kidnapper didn't go this way. He turns around and walks back upstairs.
And what was behind that door?
JonBenét's body.
That is just... It gives me chills. If he opens that latch, if he just peeks inside.
Everything changes. The entire trajectory of this case changes in that second. If he opens that door at 6 a.m., the body is discovered by law enforcement. The scene is frozen instantly.
It's a murder scene.
It's immediately a murder scene. The body is photographed in situ, meaning exactly as it was left without anyone moving it. The house is locked down as a homicide investigation, not a kidnapping negotiation center.
But because he doesn't open it, the police continue to operate under the delusion that she is gone and they are waiting for a phone call.
Correct. And this ushers in what we call the lost morning. And if you found the missed door frustrating, this part is going to make you angry.
I read the notes on this and I couldn't believe it. I literally wrote, "Are you kidding me?" in the margins. Because that house wasn't empty, was it?
No, far from it. Patsy Ramsey, in her distress, had called friends.
Before calling 911? Or after?
Right after. She called the Whites and the Fernies close family friends. She called their minister. They all came rushing over to support the family.
So you have a crime scene, and you have civilians pouring in, making coffee, walking around.
At one point, they were 5, 6, maybe 7 non-law enforcement people roaming the ground floor of the house. And because the police were focused on the phone, waiting for the ransom call, they let the friends do what friends do. They tried to be helpful.
Helpful meaning?
What?
Wiping things down.
Helpful meaning cleaning up. There are reports that friends were in the kitchen wiping down the counters with spray cleaner.
No.
Yes. They were emptying the dishwasher. They were picking up mail from the floor. One friend even tidied up JonBenét's bedroom.
They were cleaning the crime scene. They were wiping away fingerprints.
They were wiping away fingerprints, fibers, potential DNA. In forensic science, we have something called Locard's exchange principle.
Right, I've heard of this.
It basically says that the perpetrator of a crime will bring something into the crime scene and leave with something from it. Evidence is an exchange. But if you have friends wiping down the surfaces with 409, you are destroying that exchange.
You're erasing the ghost of the killer.
Perfectly put. You're erasing the ghost. And nobody stopped them.
And nobody stopped them.
It was 1996 in a town that rarely saw homicides, dealing with a kidnapping of a prominent family. The protocol just collapsed. The only room they taped off was JonBenét's bedroom, assuming that was the point of abduction.
The rest of the house was treated like a waiting room at a hospital.
Exactly. The morning drags on. The ransom note said the kidnappers would call between 8 and 10 a.m.
Which is another bizarre detail we will get to. A specific time window.
Right. But the time comes and goes, the phone doesn't ring.
The tension must have been unbearable.
Absolutely. By 1 p.m., the detective in charge of the scene, Linda Arndt, is there alone with the Ramseys and their friends. The other officers had left to set up wiretaps or investigate other leads.
She's managing this all by herself.
Pretty much. And Detective Arndt sees John Ramsey sitting there, just distraught and helpless. She decides she needs to give him something to do, keep him occupied.
So she gives him instructions.
She asks John Ramsey and his friend Fleet White to do a search of the house. She tells them to look from top to bottom for anything amiss.
Wait. She asks the father of the victim to search the crime scene.
It sounds unbelievable today, but yes. She essentially deputized the father and his friend to investigate their own house.
I mean, what if they found something? They're not trained investigators. They're going to touch it, move it.
And that's exactly what happened.
So where does John go?
He goes straight to the basement.
Should be there.
Doesn't start at the top, doesn't check the other bedrooms. He goes straight to the basement, to that latch door that Officer French had skipped. He opens it, and he screams.
He found her.
He found her. And his reaction is entirely human, completely understandable for a father, but forensically catastrophic.
He picks her up.
He picks her up. He carries her body up the stairs to the living room. He lays her on the floor right in the middle of the house.
And didn't he touch the tape?
He ripped the duct tape off her mouth. He tried to untie the cords on her wrists.
Oh my God. So any DNA on the tape
is now mixed with John's DNA. Any fibers on her nightgown are now mixed with fibers from John's shirt, from the blanket he covered her with. We lost the position of the body, how she was lying, which tells us about how she died.
and the knots on the cord.
The non-integrity is gone. We lost the lividity patterns, how the blood settles, which helps determine time of death. The moment he picked her up, the crime scene integrity went from compromised to obliterated.
So by 1:30 p.m. on December 26, we have a body, we have a contaminated house, we have wiped counters, and we have a family in shock. The police finally lock it down, but the damage is done.
The horse had not only left the barn had burned down.
Let's pivot to what the experts did find once they finally got the body to the morgue, the autopsy. I want to spend some time here because there are terms used in the headlines that I don't think people actually understand. The cause of death.
The official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma.
So in plain English,
she was strangled, and she had a massive skull fracture, an 8.5-inch crack in her skull from a single powerful blow.
That sounds incredibly violent. More than just, a rage-filled slap.
Oh, this was extreme force. The blow to the head was severe enough to knock her unconscious instantly and likely would have killed her eventually, but the strangulation was the primary cause of death.
Which brings us to the weapon. It wasn't just a rope. It was a garrote.
That's right.
Okay, I've heard this word. Garrote. What is it mechanically?
A garrote is a strangulation device designed to create mechanical advantage. It's not just wrapping a cord around a neck and pulling.
Okay.
In this case, the killer took a white nylon cord, tied a loop for the neck, but then attached a stick to the other end of the cord.
Like a handle.
Exactly, like a toggle or a windlass. You use the stick to twist the cord. This allows you to tighten the knot much, much tighter than you could with bare hands, and it locks the pressure in place.
It's a mechanism. It suggests some planning, some forethought.
It suggests control and extreme violence. And the stick, this is where the insider theory gets some fuel. What was the stick?
It was a broken paintbrush handle.
A broken handle from a paintbrush.
A paintbrush from the house.
Yes. Investigators found Patsy Ramsey's art supplies tub in the basement, a big plastic tote. Inside, they found the bristle end of a paintbrush. It had been snapped off. The handle, the wooden shaft, was missing.
And that missing handle was the piece tied into the garrote around JonBenét's neck.
Correct. So the murder weapon was manufactured inside the house using materials from the mother's hobby kit. It's a powerful piece of circumstantial evidence.
It seems almost undeniable.
But there's a problem. Here is the forensic puzzle piece that drives investigators crazy. You have the bristle end in the tub, you have the handle end on the body, but when they tried to fit them together like puzzle pieces,
They didn't fit
perfectly. There was a middle section, a splinter, maybe an inch or so long, that was missing. It had broken in two places.
Where did it go?
That is the million-dollar question. The police searched that house for days. They vacuumed rugs. They crawled on hands and knees. They never found that middle splinter.
That is bizarre. If you break a stick in the basement to make a weapon, the splinter falls on the floor.
Right. Unless the killer, in this moment of high tension, meticulously picks up this tiny sliver of wood and puts it in their pocket.
Which seems unlikely.
Very unlikely. Or, and this is the intruder argument, unless the paintbrush was broken somewhere else and the killer brought the handle in with them. Maybe I didn't make it in situ. Maybe they carried the garrote in their pocket, already made.
It's a tiny detail, a sliver of wood, but it prevents us from saying 100% that the weapon was made in that basement.
Yeah, it creates that sliver of reasonable doubt.
There was another piece of physical evidence that people obsess over. The pineapple.
Ah, the pineapple. It's so critical for the timeline. The medical examiner found partially digested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach.
So she had eaten recently.
Based on digestion rates, this suggests she ate it a relatively short time before she died, maybe an hour or two.
But the parents said she was asleep.
Right. The parents' story was unwavering. They came home from the Christmas party. JonBenét was asleep in the car. John carried her up to bed, and she never woke up. They denied feeding her pineapple.
But there was a bowl of pineapple found, right?
Yes, on the dining room table, a bowl of pineapple chunks with a large serving spoon in it, and a glass of iced tea.
Okay, so she wakes up, goes downstairs, has a snack. What's the big deal?
The big deal is the fingerprints. They found Patsy Ramsey's fingerprints on the bowl.
But not JonBenét's.
No. They also found Burke's fingerprints on the glass of tea next to the bowl.
Okay, so Brooke and Patsy handled the items.
Right. Now, Patsy said she didn't remember putting it out, but if she did, and if JonBenét ate it, it proves she was awake. It completely contradicts the she was asleep all night story.
And if the parents are lying about her being asleep, the immediate question is why?
Why? What happened during that pineapple snack? It creates a gap in the timeline where something could have gone wrong.
It opens the door to the theory that an argument happened or an accident happened downstairs late at night. The pineapple is the key to that timeline.
It is.
Let's move to the most famous piece of evidence in this case, the ransom note. I feel like we could do a whole episode just on these sheets of paper.
We absolutely could. It is, without a doubt, the most unusual ransom note in FBI history.
Let's start with the physical reality of it. You mentioned it was long.
It was 2.5 pages, handwritten, on a legal pad that came from a notepad inside the house. The pen used to write it also came from a cup on the kitchen counter.
So everything was sourced from inside the house.
Everything. The paper, the pen.
2.5 pages. I mean, standard ransom notes are like, I have your daughter, put $50,000 in a bag, no cops. Why 2.5 pages?
The FBI estimated that to write 2.5 pages of coherent text, specifically creating a persona, would take at least 21 minutes.
21 minutes.
Minimum. Imagine that. You have just killed a child or kidnapped a child in a house where the parents are sleeping upstairs. And you sit down at the kitchen table or on the stairs and you write for 20 minutes.
You're not rushing, you're taking your time.
You take the time to compose a manifesto. It implies a level of comfort that is terrifying. Or it implies you know the parents aren't going to wake up.
And they found a draft.
A practice draft was found in the trash can. The writer started with Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, then crossed it out and started over. Who edits a ransom note during a crime?
Someone who is staging it. That's the argument.
It's the strongest argument for staging. Now look at the content. It's addressed to Mr. Ramsey. It says, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction.
Small foreign faction. It sounds like a spy novel. It sounds ridiculous.
It sounds theatrical. And that theatricality continues. The note is filled with aggressive, almost cartoonish threats. She dies, she dies, she dies. It mentions beheading. It says, if we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies.
Who talks like that?
A character in a movie. And you mentioned in the pre-show that there are movie quotes in here.
Yes, it is a collage of 1990s action movie dialogue. The phrase, "Don't try to grow a brain, John," is a quote from the movie Speed, which had just aired on TV.
Oh.
The line about law enforcement countermeasures is from the movie Ransom, starring Mel Gibson. The stray dog line echoes Dirty Harry.
So the author isn't a foreign terrorist. The author is a movie buff.
The author is someone role-playing a criminal. They are using the language of what they think a kidnapper sounds like based on Hollywood.
It's just, the more you look at it, the weirder it gets.
And then we hit the number.
What a money.
The demand is for $118,000.
That is such a weirdly specific number. Why not $1 million? Why not $100K flat?
That detail is the anchor that ties the crime to John Ramsey. John's Christmas bonus from Access Graphics the prior year was exactly $118,117.50.
It's basically the same number. It's too close to be a coincidence. So this tells us the writer knew John's finances and knew them intimately.
Which leads to two possibilities. One, it's the parents. John or Patsy chose a number that was familiar to them. Or two, it's a disgruntled employee who saw a pay stub.
Exactly. But it effectively rules out a random drifter. A random burglar doesn't ask for $118,000. They ask for everything you have.
Okay, what about the handwriting? I feel like everyone has an opinion on this. It looks like Patsy's writing.
This is one of the most contentious battles in the whole case. The police and the CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, analyzed Patsy's handwriting samples. They concluded that there were indications she wrote it.
Indications, so not a match.
Not a definitive match. They couldn't say 100%, but they couldn't eliminate her. And crucially, she was the only person in the Ramsey family they couldn't eliminate.
But didn't a court later disagree? This is from the lawsuit documents, right?
Yes. Years later, in a federal court ruling regarding a defamation case, the judge cited 6 separate certified handwriting experts. These were independent experts.
Okay.
They testified that it was highly unlikely Patsy wrote the note. They pointed to structural differences, letter formation differences, things a layman wouldn't see. The judge basically said, the police are relying on suspicion, but the science says she didn't do it.
So, like everything else in this case, the handwriting is a deadlock. One side sees a match, the other side sees a coincidence.
Correct. Total deadlock.
Okay, we have to talk about the science that is supposed to solve everything, DNA. You called it the ghost in the machine in our notes. Why is DNA so confusing here?
Because people think DNA is simple. You find blood, you match it, you catch the killer. But in this case, we're dealing with touch DNA or trace DNA.
Explain the difference for us.
Traditional DNA is finding a pool of blood or semen. A large sample, lots of genetic material. Touch DNA is microscopic skin cells left behind when you touch something. We shed thousands of skin cells a minute. It's much less reliable.
Okay, so where did they find it?
They found trace DNA on JonBenét's underwear, specifically mixed with a tiny drop of her own blood, and on the waistband of her long johns.
And whose was it?
It belonged to an unknown male. We call this profile Unknown Male Number 1.
And we know who it wasn't.
It wasn't John, it wasn't Burke, it wasn't Patsy, it wasn't any of their friends who were in the house. They checked everyone.
So stop right there. If I'm a juror and you tell me there is unknown male DNA mixed with the victim's blood on her underwear and is not the father or brother, that's an intruder. Case closed. Why isn't it that simple?
Because we don't know how that DNA got there. This is where the controversy explodes. In 2016, new analysis techniques, much more sensitive techniques, suggested that the sample might be a composite. Meaning it might not be one person. It might be a mixture of genetic markers from multiple people piled on top of each other. Think of it like a messy signature with 3 people writing on top of each other. You can see parts of each, but it's hard to separate them.
So it could be a mixture of people who touch the clothing at different times.
Exactly. And more importantly, trace DNA is easily transferred.
Transferred how?
Let's say I shake hands with you, and then you go touch a child's clothing. My DNA can end up on that clothing, even though I was never in the room. This is called secondary transfer.
Or, as you mentioned in the notes, could it be for the manufacturing process?
Yes. This is a huge theory, that the DNA could belong to a factory worker in Asia who packaged the underwear. If they coughed or touched the fabric, their DNA is there before the package is even opened. It could be completely benign.
So, view A, the intruder theory, says this is the killer's calling card. View B, the contamination theory, says this is biological background noise.
Exactly. And because the crime scene was so contaminated, with so many people walking through the house, we can't rule out that the DNA wasn't transferred by a first responder, or a friend, or a blanket.
But contamination comes back to haunt every piece of evidence.
Every single piece.
Let's organize all of this into the 2 main theories. Because really, everyone listening right now is probably leaning one way or the other. Let's start with Theory A, the family. The inside job. Why did the Boulder police focus on them so intensely from the get-go?
It starts with the lack of forced entry. To the police, the house looks sealed up tight for a Colorado winter night. No kicked-in doors, no shattered windows they could immediately find.
So the crime started from inside.
That was their working assumption. Then you have the ransom note written, with house supplies, taking 20 minutes, asking for a specific bonus amount. To the police, that screams staging.
Staging a crime to cover up.
What? The prevailing theory among the BPD was that this was an accident or a rage killing. Maybe JonBenét wet the bed, which was an issue she struggled with. Maybe Patsy, who was a cancer survivor and under a lot of stress, just snapped.
Or the pineapple argument.
Or an argument over the pineapple. A blow to the head happens, she's unconscious or dead, panic sets in. And to protect the family or to protect themselves, they cover it up.
They create a kidnapping scenario to explain the body. But then, for some reason, the plan changes or goes wrong, and the body is left in the basement.
Exactly. The staging theory is that the cover-up was clumsy, amateurish, because they weren't criminals. They were panicked parents.
And the parents' behavior in the days and weeks after didn't help their case?
No. They lawyered up immediately. They hired their own investigators. They hired a PR firm. They refused to sit for formal, separate interviews with the police for months.
To the public, that looks guilty. If you have nothing to hide, just talk to the police.
But to a defense attorney, that looks smart. The police had already decided they were guilty. The leaks coming out of the police department were vicious. The Ramseys felt they were being framed, so they built a wall around themselves.
What about the brother, Burke? He was 9. Surely he wasn't a suspect.
For a long time, the official line was no. He was interviewed, of course, but cleared by the police and the DA in 1999. But in 2016, CBS aired a docuseries that blew the lid off this again. A panel of experts proposed a new timeline. They proposed that Burke, perhaps in a fit of jealousy over the pineapple or a toy, hit her with a heavy flashlight.
A flashlight found on the kitchen counter.
Yes. A heavy mag light that was left out. The theory was that the parents walked in, saw what their son had done, and staged the entire kidnapping to save their only remaining child.
That is a dark theory.
It is. And it led to a massive defamation lawsuit. Burke Ramsey sued CBS for $750 million. They settled in 2019. We don't know the terms, but the fact that a major network settled suggests Burke had a very strong case, that there was no actual evidence for this theory.
But the suspicion around the family was strong enough to go to a grand jury. And this is the part of the story that I think shocks people the most. I remember when this news broke in 2013.
It was a bombshell. For over a decade, the public thought the grand jury found nothing. That they just couldn't decide. But when the documents were unsealed, we learned that in 1999, the grand jury did vote to indict John and Patsy Ramsey.
They voted to charge them.
Yes. They signed what are called true bills. But the charges weren't murder.
What were they then?
The charges were child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime.
Explain that distinction. That's really important.
It is. The grand jury essentially said, we don't know who struck the blow. We can't prove John killed her or Patsy killed her, but we believe there is probable cause that they placed her in a situation that resulted in her death and that they assisted in the cover-up after the fact.
So the jury said, charge them. Why weren't they arrested?
It is because of the district attorney, Alex Hunter. In the legal system, a grand jury votes on probable cause, which is a lower standard. A trial jury needs proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
A much higher bar.
Much higher. Alex Hunter looked at the case. Specifically, the unknown male DNA, the compromised crime scene, the conflicting handwriting analysis, and he believed he would lose at trial.
He thought a defense attorney would rip the case apart.
Exactly. He thought the unknown male DNA would create reasonable doubt every single time. So he refused to sign the indictment, he pocketed it, he never filed the charges, and the Ramseys walked free.
That is a staggering amount of power for one person to have. To override the citizens' vote.
It is, and it's why the police versus DA war is so bitter. The police felt they had their suspects. The DA felt the police had botched the evidence so badly it was unusable.
Let's flip the coin. Theory B, the intruder. This theory has a champion, a man named Lou Smit. Who was he?
Lou Smit was a legend in Colorado law enforcement. He was a homicide detective with a reputation for solving the unsolvable, these really tough cold cases. He was brought out of retirement by the DA's office specifically to look at this case with fresh eyes.
So he wasn't part of the original Boulder PD team?
No, he was an outsider. And he came to a very different conclusion than the police.
He did. He was convinced the Ramseys were innocent. He believed the police had tunnel vision and were ignoring a mountain of evidence that pointed to an intruder. What evidence?
He focused on the basement window. There was a broken window in the train room. Beneath it, on the floor, there was a suitcase.
A suitcase?
Smit theorized that the intruder entered or exited through that window and used the suitcase as a step to get in or out. He found a scuff mark on the wall that looked like a shoe print. He even found leaves and debris under the window that seemed to come from outside.
But I remember reading a counter-argument to this involving a spider web.
The famous cobweb. Critics of Smit, mainly the Boulder PD, pointed out that there was a spider web in the corner of the window frame. It was intact. They argued that a grown man couldn't crawl through that window without breaking the web.
It sounds like a detail from Sherlock Holmes, the curious case of the undisturbed cobweb.
It really does. But Smit had other evidence. He found a boot mark in the mold on the basement floor. A high-tech boot print that didn't match any shoes owned by the Ramseys.
An unidentified print.
An unidentified print right there in the wine cellar where the body was found.
Yeah, and the stun gun.
This was Smit's biggest contribution, in my opinion. He looked at the autopsy photos and saw 2 sets of small paired abrasions on JonBenét's back and face. The police had written them off as nothing.
Okay.
But Smit realized they were spaced perfectly apart, about the width of the prongs on an air taser stun gun.
So he thought she was tasered.
He believed the intruder used a stun gun to subdue her silently. If that's true, it points heavily away from the parents. Parents don't typically use stun guns on their children, and stun guns aren't usually household items in 1996.
That's a huge piece of evidence for the intruder theory.
It's massive, and it leads to the question, who was this intruder? I mean, who enters a house on Christmas night? Smith pointed out that there had been over 100 burglaries in the neighborhood in the months leading up to the murder, and ominously, there were 38 registered sex offenders living within a 2-mile radius of the Ramsey home.
38? That seems incredibly high.
It's a university town, high density, but it creates a target-rich environment for suspects. Smith believed one of them watched the family, knew the layout, and struck when the house was quiet.
Did they ever have a solid suspect from that list? I remember the name John Mark Karr.
John Mark Karr is the great distraction of this case. In 2006, 10 years later, this man was arrested in Thailand. He confessed. He gave graphic details. He said he loved JonBenét and that her death was an accident.
It was a huge news. I remember the footage of him being flown back. Everyone thought, this is it.
But it fell apart instantly. His DNA didn't match the sample on the underwear. He claimed he drugged her, but the autopsy showed 0 drugs in her system. He was a fantasist, a man obsessed with the case who wanted the attention.
So a false lead.
A huge false lead that just added more noise to the signal.
So where does that leave us? We have the inside job theory that fits the psychology and the ransom note, but fails on the DNA. We have the intruder theory that fits the DNA and the stun gun marks, but fails on the logic of the note.
And that is the paralysis of this case. The two theories are almost perfectly balanced. Every time you find a fact that proves one, you find another fact that contradicts it.
And the investigation wars didn't help. The people supposed to solve this were fighting each other.
It was toxic. Steve Thomas, the lead BPD detective, resigned and wrote a book attacking the DA. Lou Smith resigned from the DA's office and essentially spent the rest of his life as a private citizen fighting for the Ramseys' innocence. You had a fractured system.
And then the exoneration. This is a roller coaster.
It really was. In 2008, a new district attorney, Mary Lacey, who had worked with Lou Smith and believed in the intruder theory, wrote a formal letter to the Ramsey family. She apologized to them. She said that based on the development of new touch DNA technology, they were officially exonerated.
That sounds like case closed for them.
It was, for a while. But legal experts hated it. Police hated it. And in 2016, the former police chief, Mark Beckner, did a Reddit AMA and Ask Me Anything. And he let loose.
What did he say?
He called the exoneration absurd. He said, you simply don't clear primary suspects based on a tiny piece of unexplained DNA that might be transfer, that might be from a factory worker. You just don't do it.
So the police still think they did it.
Many of the original investigators went to their graves believing the Ramseys were guilty, but officially. The case is open. It is an active homicide investigation in Boulder, Colorado.
It's tragic. We are talking about a little girl who died, and her death has become a battlefield for egos and theories and careers.
And that brings us back to the beginning. The tragedy isn't just the murder, it's the lost justice. And that justice was likely lost between 6 a.m. and 1 p.m. on December 26th.
Because of the contamination.
Because the scene wasn't frozen. Because the note was handled by Patsy and the police. Because friends were cleaning the kitchen. Because the body was moved. We can never go back and test the real scene. We are only testing the contaminated scene.
So every piece of evidence has an asterisk next to it.
A giant asterisk. Maybe it's an intruder. Maybe it's staging. Maybe it's a stun gun. Maybe it's just a random mark. It's all maybe.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the takeaway? We usually try to find a lesson, but this feels like a lesson in what not to do.
The takeaway is about the fragility of truth. We live in the CSI effect era. We think that if a crime happens, a team of geniuses with blue flashlights will find a hair and solve it in 45 minutes.
Right.
But the reality is that forensic science is fragile. It relies on human procedure. If a cop doesn't open a door, or if a friend picks up a notepad, the truth can evaporate. It can be lost forever in a matter of hours.
And it leaves us with this haunting ambiguity. If you trust the DNA, you have to believe in an intruder. If you trust the behavioral profiling and the bizarre ransom note, you have to look at the family. And you can't really reconcile them.
They are irreconcilable poles, the north and south pole of the same crime.
I want to leave the listener with a final thought to chew on. We often look at cold cases and say science will catch up. We are waiting for that one familial DNA match in a database that will crack it open.
Right, the Golden State Killer model.
Exactly. But in the case of JonBenét Ramsey, is it possible that DNA is actually the problem? that our reliance on this God key of biology has blinded us to the circumstantial evidence that was right in front of us? Or, conversely, is the DNA the only truthful thing in a house full of lies and chaos?
That is the question. Is the DNA the boast of the killer, or is it just a ghost in the machine?
I have a feeling we will be debating this for another 30 years. If you want to see the ransom note yourself, and I highly recommend reading the full text to see the movie quotes and the bizarre language, check the links in the show notes. We also have diagrams of the house so you can see that basement door for yourself.
It's worth the look. Just be prepared to go down a very deep rabbit hole.
Thanks for diving in with us. Stay curious.